This would be a man named Abbas Parker, also known as Skinny Me. Skinny didn't grow up with any OHB members, however his brother was cellmates with Ab in prison. So while Ab was in prison, his cellmate told him to get in touch with his brother once he was released. This is because Skinny was a talented rapper and his brother wanted him to get signed. But Ab heard about his stories in the streets and he knew that he was a certified stepper. All of this made him a top candidate for an OBH member. He was a rapper and a stepper at the same time. Skinny was a wild dude in the streets and his actions would be super unpredictable. And that takes us to September 11th, 2017. It's another Monday in North Philly and Skinny is hanging out on 22nd in Lehigh. At 2 p.m. he's set to meet with a business associate named Sherman Williams. Allegedly, Sherman is owed money by Skinny and is going over to collect it. Little does Sherman know, Skinny Me is not the kind of guy you do fair business with. Well, after paying a traffic ticket downtown, Sherman heads to North Philly to meet with him. At 2:30, he arrives on the corner and removes his helmet to talk. Somehow the conversation turns into an argument and Skinny Me loses his cool. Skinny instantly runs to his white Jeep and drops his phone in the process. He then hops in the car and speeds off to the OHB mansion.
Sandra Brown says her son Sherman Williams was finally on the right track in life.
He was turning himself completely around and he wasn't dealing with the same people that he was dealing with.
Brown says on Monday, September 11th, Williams was on his way back from paying his parking tickets. She says he called her at about 5 p.m. to check in.
We had a conversation for about 10 minutes.
That was the last time she talked to him. About 30 minutes later, the 29-year-old was shot multiple times along 22nd Street between Somerset and Lehigh Streets in North Philadelphia.
From what I can understand, him and some guy had some words. But I don't know what words was so powerful for this person to shoot my son in the back twice.
Williams died less than 2 hours later. The city of Philadelphia is offering up to $20,000 in reward money for the arrest and conviction of the person responsible. All you have to do is call the Citizens Crime Commission at 215-546-TIPS. All calls will remain anonymous.
When he arrives, he realizes he doesn't have his phone, so he searches the car but can't find anything. Skinny knew that he messed up and he was hoping that police would not find the phone. But what he failed to realize is that Philly has cameras everywhere and the car's plates were on. Because of this, police found that the car was registered to Abdul West at the OHB mansion address. Police were excited and they figured that they had finally got him. So just the next day, the OHB mansion was raided, but when police arrived, no one was home, which was very unusual for the mansion. During the raid, they found $87,000 in cash and all kinds of illicit items. However, in Pennsylvania, you can't raid someone for one crime and then use the findings to charge them with something else. So no one was charged for anything and police were unsure of who did this to Sherman Williams. However, Skinny's decision still had some serious implications as the police now knew what AR Ab had going on. So after the raid, they began following him and tracking his every move, even allowing him to commit crimes. The raid should have been a huge wake-up call for Ab, but he was either slow or he didn't even care about the consequences. It's almost like he took Philadelphia police as a joke, especially after this next move. After Skinny's incident, Ab decided to reward him by introducing him to the world on a major hip-hop channel.
Y'all know who he is. This is my little brother, Skinny Me. The notorious Skinny Me.
OBH
that boy about 130 pounds of horror. I know this for a fact, man. And guess what? This is what I like about Skinny Me. This is what I like about Skinny Me music, man. It's just raw. And it's like reality rap.
Mafia.
Skinny Me will go through a situation, and guess what? It's gonna be in the song. He's gonna make a song about it the same day. So I know that's why I feel it so much. I know it.
Reckless anthem.
When he said I killed the and I did that, I seen him do it. I seen him do it. I seen him do it. When he said somebody try to drop on me, not wrestling out for the gun,
man.
and I seen him do it. I know he did it for a fact. I believe he's gonna make millions of dollars off the Skinny Me.
Fucking money, original black hustlers.
And one of the newest members,
gonna die copy.
but most vital member, key member. He's from Ohio.
This was not a smart move, but Skinny Me was eating it all up. Although he wasn't originally from Philly, he was becoming a star in their streets. His rap career was also taking off because people now knew that he was living his raps. But on the other hand, Philadelphia police were all over him as he became their new target. OHB had the streets on lock, and AR-AB would keep making boneheaded decisions. Instead of focusing on covering his tracks, his main concern was eliminating competition in the streets. In particular, he was upset with a former friend who was now selling in the same North Philly market. This would be a man named Robert Johnson, a young homie of AB who used to hustle for him back in 2011. During this time, Robert was arrested and sentenced to 7 years in prison, all allegedly behind OBH. Once he was released, he wanted no parts of the streets, so he took a completely different route. He was taking classes to become a personal trainer and was trying his best to stay out of trouble. However, life as a convicted felon is hard, and it's believed that he began hustling again in North Philly, but this time without AR-AB. Once Abdul found out, he was pissed, as he was a self-proclaimed extortionist. He needed to be in control of everyone, and he used fear to get his way. However, Robert Johnson was no longer going for this, and AR-AB was livid. No one had ever stood up to him like this, like who would go against Philly's top goon. In the old days, AB would have handled this himself, but now he had guys to call on. Skinny was laying low after his recent incident, so AB called on a brand new member. This would be a man named Dantez Stewart, also known as Taz. Taz was a hustler for another gang in Philly, but he had recently fallen out with them. And after the fallout, he befriended OBH Dark Low and inquired on being an OBH hustler himself. He told him that he's down bad and willing to do anything to get money with OBH. Low knew that AB was willing to accept any new members, so he brought him to his house. There, Taz and AB discussed potentially joining OBH and what that would entail. He pretty much said you have to do anything I tell you, whether that's stepping on rivals or selling whatever. Taz agreed and told him he'd do anything for him. So AB shook his hand and told him that in order to become a member, you must stay at the OBH mansion for 2 weeks. There you'll meet members and learn the ins and outs of the operation. Letting someone you just met into your illegal operation might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Taz could be relaying information to his former gang, he could be plotting to rob, or he could be an undercover officer. AR-AB was not thinking it through. But after 2 weeks at the mansion, Taz officially became an OHB member. He immediately hit the streets and began hustling like never before. He was so geeked that after just 4 weeks of being a member, he got an OBH tattoo on his neck. This was to show his fellow members his loyalty and to let them know he'll never snitch on them. Dantez Stewart was a wild card to say the least. Well, this is the guy that AB called to eliminate Robert Johnson. And that takes us to October 12th, 2017. Ooh, hey. It's a month after the raid and AR-AB is back at the mansion with some fellow members. At 12:30 p.m. he calls Taz and tells him to come to the mansion ASAP. So Taz immediately pulls up and sits down with AB. AB shows him a picture of Robert Johnson and tells him to follow instructions. He tells him to go on Instagram and to DM Robert to make a deal. He then tells him that when they meet up, he needs to eliminate him. Taz only joined OBH for money, so he really doesn't want to do this. So he makes up an excuse and tells AB that he doesn't have an Instagram. AB believes he's being honest, so he comes up with a solution. He tells him to call his baby mama and have her come over to the mansion. When she arrives, he asks for her phone and hands it over to Taz. From his baby mama's account, he tells him to DM Robert and tell him who he is. He tells him to tell Robert that he heard he moves weight and he wants to buy some. Once Robert responds, he tells him to exchange phone numbers and now they're locked in. At this point, Taz has no excuses and he has to do it. So Taz and Robert agree to meet up later in the day. Taz really doesn't want to do this. Regardless, at 8 p.m., Taz meets up with Robert to complete the job. So Taz gets out of his car and walks up to Robert's window. He reaches for his waistband, but he can't get himself to do it. So instead, he simply makes the transaction and shakes Robert's hand. He then returns to the OBH mansion, not sure what to expect. He tells AB that he simply couldn't get himself to do it. AB is pissed, so he slaps the table and says, "What? Why?" So Taz tells him that he simply has no idea why he's doing it. AB responds by saying that Robert is playing both sides of the fence and it can't continue. This response doesn't satisfy Taz, so AB decides to throw in a perk. He tells him that if you do this, I'll make sure you're straight. No further details are discussed, as this was all Taz needed to hear. Attempt number 2. October 14th, 2017. Taz texts Robert and tells him that he needs to re-up. Robert responds and tells him that he's busy at the club and he can't meet up until after 2 a.m. So the two agree to meet up in the parking lot outside the club after he's done. In the meantime, Taz begins to ponder his decision, so he calls up a fellow member for reassurance. The member, whose name is OBH Birdo, is ecstatic and he actually volunteers to go with him. So at 2 a.m, Taz hops in his car, picks up Birdo, and they head to the club parking lot. That's where they wait until 3:30 a.m. when Robert finally leaves the club. They text him to meet them in the parking lot and that they'll get out of the car when he arrives. So Robert walks towards their car, and that's when Taz hops out. He hops back in his car, speeds away, and heads directly to Birdo's. When he arrives, he hands his blower to Birdo and tells him to put it in a shoebox in his closet. Birdo's confused and says, "Why don't you just go throw it away?" Taz responds by saying, "I'm gonna come back to pick it up in 2 weeks, don't even worry about it." This doesn't make any sense, but I'll continue. When Taz gets home, he texts Ab and says touchdown. He then puts his phone away and goes to sleep.